This is the Flabbergasted Podcast, where we just can't believe you haven't seen it. Every episode, we discuss a movie that one of us has seen and the other hasn't. Follow us on Instagram @FlabberPod and subscribe in your podcast app of choice. I'm your host, Rogge. Let's get to it. Today we are talking about the 2015 George Miller film Mad Max Fury Road, starring Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron. In a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a woman rebels against a tyrannical ruler in search for her homeland, with the aid of a group of female prisoners, a psychotic worshiper, and a drifter named Max. This was the first time I had seen this film in, I think, over 8 years. I think probably spring 2016 was last time I saw it. I've never seen another Mad Max film, and I like it a lot. Jess, what's your history with Mad Max?
Let's roll back just really quick 1 second.
Okay.
Really quick 1 second. The genre, you said, what did you call it?
I didn't. It's an action-adventure sci-fi movie.
Okay, so when Jeremy and I looked this up last night, there were like 12 action, adventure, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic.
You're using a different site.
We must have been, but it was like a 500 things. I was like, what does this movie want to be? Let's ask that question.
It's action-adventure.
Okay, so my history with Mad Max, I have this feeling. First of all, I sometimes get Mad Max and Waterworld confused.
Okay.
So this is like,
I haven't seen Waterworld.
This is original Mad Max.
Right.
I don't know if I actually ever saw the whole original thing. I know it's Mel Gibson. I don't remember if I actually saw the movie or if I just know it because it is cult classic-y, you know?
Yeah. You probably think you hate the director, but he didn't actually direct this, but you hate him anyway, something like that.
Something like that. But I had never seen this one.
Nominated for Best Picture 2015. That's why I saw it, because we saw all or almost all of the nominees that year.
And you
Rachel and I were on
really
a kick.
liked it.
I did. Mm-hmm. I really liked it then. I really liked it now.
Okay, this is going to be some great content.
Yeah, Jeremy said that he thought it sucked. So I'm assuming you hated it.
Here's
what I'm learning about you watching a movie is that if it's not aggressively plot driven, all you want to do when watch a movie is be like, I would have said this instead of that. Or like, wouldn't they have done, that's not realistic. Shouldn't they have done that? And it's like, that's not what this movie's about. This movie's about the nature of humanity and like extremism and anti-capitalists and stuff like that.
I definitely have things to say, but also overall, yeah, I didn't love it. But I'm watching this movie last night and all I'm thinking of is when the four of us watched Reminiscence together and you're like...
Which was one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
And I don't understand how you're not drawing parallels to this movie like at all.
The acting was bad. The plot was stupid and didn't make any sense. And
you could be talking about Fury Road for all I know right now.
It wasn't well shot. It was like dark and weird.
I would say that this movie, Fury Road, was shot well. Like, it definitely had some good camera movement. It had great lighting.
Yeah, there's all kinds of, I didn't look up a lot of trivia or anything, but from other podcasts I've listened to that have mentioned this movie, there's like lore about it took like 2 years to film or something, and people were like getting sick. They had like a whole town. I think it was filmed in like a Saharan African country, which would make sense given the setting.
Also,
and so they had like
Australia.
a whole town just for this, and like everyone was so... there was like a lot of blood, sweat, and tears poured into making it look as beautiful as it does.
Yeah, I would agree with that part. It did look pretty. I mean, it looked weird, but pretty.
Yeah. I mean, it's post-apocalyptic. Like, it's supposed to look weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you thrown off by not having like War Boy backstory? Like, there's clearly lore there into like the history, religiosity of it, and we don't get any of the lore. And I think I was okay with that. But I was like, Jess won't be okay with it. You want to know. You wanted to see it from the beginning.
Yeah. And I even said that. I'm like, I don't know about if they couldn't give me enough backstory to keep me interested. All they're doing is making me ask questions.
We just watch movies so differently because I think they were very intentionally drip feeding it to you. It was not because it's not the point. it's not like what the movie's about is like making sure you know all the details about whatever this society is. The point is that you like, as he does little things, like when he says Valhalla or like spray paint his mouth or whatever, you're like, oh, look at that other weird thing that's part of this. Like you sort of start to piece it together. And I liked that it was just like little bits here and there. I was like, okay, I've got enough of this.
You like that they're asking you to figure it out.
That they're asking me? No, I think they don't care. I think that they're saying, you don't need to figure that. This isn't something to be figured out. This isn't what this is like. It's a thing that's happening here. And it's like, cool. I got enough of it. I got that it was like a rock and roll based religious war fervor. And that's all they were going for. That's all I needed. It was basically religious zealots about rock and roll. Like they said they called him Kama Crazy a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
He's crazy and kamikaze. I mean, it's just war, bloodlust. And that's it. That's what's going on. All right, got it. Those are the war guys. They're into the war.
Big issue with this piece that we're talking about right here is at the beginning, we get a little bit of information with the voiceover. And Max says he was a policeman.
Yeah.
And so I just don't understand how quickly I have to assume that this was based in our timeline and then pushed in past whatever catastrophic event to make it that. Like, that's an assumption I'm taking based on the technology. It didn't it didn't backwards regress like so far that it's unrecognizable, and it didn't push us so far forward with technology that it's unrecognizable, right?
So being unable to place the exact time frame of when this movie takes place relative to our timeline takes you out of it?
It does, because I'm like, if he was a policeman,
who cares?
How is he still in the physical shape that he is? And all of this like change has happened so quickly and so instantly. And then that freaks me out a little bit, because then I'm like, oh my God, this could really happen. We are living in this world where these events could be crazy enough to happen to push people into this crazy mindset to be doing these ridiculous things. And
it's
then I get sad.
It's an allegory about
and
environmental destruction and the ills of, the extreme potential pitfalls of something like capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point. I think it's like he was a policeman like when it was like halfway bad getting into what it is. I mean, I'm sure it took, for that kind of extreme environmental devastation, I'm sure that's a couple of generations, but it's going to be progressive to some extent. So I don't think he was a policeman in 2015 and that's it set in 2017, but there's probably some version of policeman. I mean, he clearly has some EMT skills there at the end. He like is hooking himself up, but I mean, and also like, that part's not trying to be totally realistic either, right?
No.
They're just by plugging his blood into his blood. It's like, okay, now now you're surviving. Like that's all. That's not medicine, but it's close enough. You get what's happening. Oh, okay, he needs his blood. Got it.
I think if they're going to do something like that, they have to take me out of it enough that I suspend disbelief.
And you can suspend disbelief about the people walking on the giant rollers in order to pump up the water and stuff that they called aquacola.
No, I get that.
That was too realistic.
Well, that was the whole idea of the blood transfusion. I'm like, okay, so this is very similar to a blood transfusion concept, but not quite what we would do today, but not so far. Like, I needed more distance, I think, to bring me in more.
Okay.
I know. It's weird. I get it.
I get the impression that you sit down and decide to not like the movies I pick because you just said that it wasn't realistic or unrealistic enough.
Yeah.
To take you in or out of. Like, I don't know what any of that means.
So
this movie isn't about any of that.
I know,
it's about
it
driving down the road and the choices
it.
Furiosa has to make.
Okay. Keep going.
So there's a lot of things happen, and also it's all just one big event. There's wives we have a warlord, Immortan Joe, who has like brothers who run Bullet Farm and Gastown, and he keeps
me like
the most beautiful women
to
as
like
wives.
Understand that they were his brothers.
I think they were his brother. They at least had some kind of family ties, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It just took me a really long time to figure that out.
Yeah, if not literal brothers, then like members of the same oligarchical like family ruling class of some kind. And Furiosa, who is one of his lieutenants, one of his imperators is what they called it. She takes the wives with her on a supply run to Gastown and heads out for the Garden of Eden, right? The green place. That's where she grew up and she was captured from. So hijinks ensue when Mad Max, who's the blood bag, ends up meeting up after like a crash in a sandstorm and stuff. And so then it's about, how far are you willing to go? Are you looking for your own personal safety, or are you trying to make choices that are going to benefit society as a whole, kind of thing? I was really impressed. I thought Tom Hardy was great. And I thought Charlize Theron was great too.
I agree.
Because she has one arm.
Yeah.
How do they even do that? That's movie magic to me. She has two arms. Charlize Theron has two arms. Is that all done in post? No way.
You can green screen it.
Yeah, but I don't think this was like a green screen movie. I think it was filmed on location.
I mean, like you have a sleeve.
Oh, she just puts it all in a green sleeve on.
I'm not saying that's what she did, but I've seen behind the scenes on other movies and they can make that look like that.
For prosthetics. It took me a minute to even see that was happening. I didn't see it immediately, which I thought was cool. Like, that's not what it was about.
She also could have done like the motion capture green dots or the black and white dots, I guess.
Mm-hmm, that's true. So how much were you rooting? How long did it take you to start rooting for Furiosa?
Oh, she's got women she's smuggling. Obviously, I'm on her side right away.
Yeah, absolutely. The women are like clearly young and kind of naive, but very like well-spoken, like better educated. Like they didn't like buy into the whole Immortan Joe, like Valhalla stuff.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool and a good example of like, even when the men are going to go crazy about bloodlust, like it's going to be the women that figure it out quicker and are like, come on, like this is not what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Did you think it was realistic that kind of warlord would have like wives, slaves, concubines?
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't love it, obviously.
It's just right.
But it is par for the course for sure.
Yeah, it's absolutely what would happen in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And then they cut even to showing mothers, like nursing mothers who they have hooked up and they're pumping breast milk. And it's like, I guess that's what you would do. But that becomes like, they mentioned mother's milk a couple of times, like one of their most precious resources, which is like truly macabre, like just the matter of fact way. And like, they're like sitting there holding the babies and stuff to keep the milk flowing. And it's like, I think that's a scene where it does a really good job of like, you're supposed to be grossed out. Right. And it really succeeds there.
Yeah, I agree. And I didn't have anything else. I was like, ugh, the worst.
Yeah.
So obviously, even before we know she's smuggling the brides, I'm on her side.
So even as soon as she turns away from Gastown, you're like, okay, whatever she's doing is probably the right move.
Yeah.
Because then it's the next scene that he goes and realizes the wives were taken.
Yeah. I'm like, what's going on here? But I'm also like, I don't want to be back at the Citadel. I don't care about what's going on there.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, especially once Tom Hardy and them leave to go try to track them down. There's nothing else. And I don't think they cut back really at all after they leave until we get back there at the end.
Yeah.
We have I think it's a really fun and cool fight scene when Mad Max and Nux get to he carries his war boy and he's like got the gun that he knows is like
empty.
Is jammed or whatever. He knows it's not going to work, but he's pointing it at him and like making him cut his bolts and stuff. And then they have like a back and forth fight where like the war boy wakes up and he's like, oh, we're on a team, right? Okay, great. And he's like knows that he's on Bloodbag's team and all that. I think that's really, really fun because Furiosa is great too.
She's amazing. The whole thing's great. And I do like how if you take it like the brides are trying to get involved. They don't really know what they're doing very much, but they're trying to be helpful.
Yeah, they're so willing to do whatever. Yeah, so just pulling chains and stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I also think that it speaks to like a desperation of we can't go back.
Yeah, they are not just like prissy pampered like girls that don't really understand what's going on. They're like, no, we're gonna ride or die for like whatever is going on here.
Yeah.
Like it's like you said, desperation, we're not going back, which is like they're in the middle of the desert and they could have every luxury that exists, but that while in slavery is just that much worse.
They have just a tiny bit of hope if they're naive enough to hope, but they know like it's not high chances that they're getting out of this alive. This is a suicide mission just to get away.
Yeah. I think hope is one of the cool themes because they talk about it later before they decide if they're going over the salt flats or not. Max is like, you don't hope. Hope is stupid. But like, you're right. They have hope. The war boys have hope that they're going to go to Valhalla, that they're going to live and die and live again. Right. Unless you're controlling the means of production, unless you're one of the warlords or gun lords or whatever, all you really have is hope.
Yeah.
In some ways. So do you ever come around on Nux, the war boy that Max is the blood bag for?
So I recognized him right away.
Oh, really? What's the actor?
Nicholas Holtz. He was Beast.
What else is he
in X-Men First Class. He's in
haven't seen it.
The Great with the girl, Elle Fanning, I think. That's a Hulu TV show, I think. What else is he in?
Okay, I'm on his IMDb. About a Boy, Warm. That's him as a kid, I think. Warm Bodies, Days of Future Past.
Warm Bodies. Yep.
He's in the Garfield movie that comes out this year. Renfield is the Nick Cage vampire movie.
He's going to be the new Lex in the new Superman they're working on.
Okay, I am scrolling through his IMDb. I don't think I've ever seen another Nicholas Hoult movie. Interesting.
I definitely
so you were predisposed
right away.
So does that make you come around on him earlier
than
you otherwise would have?
Probably so, because I also was like, when we first see him, he's getting the transfusion from Max, which I'm not really sure I understand what he's getting the transfusion for.
Well, he's got those. He's a war boy. War boys can only live a half-life. They kept saying half-life.
Yeah.
Right. He's at the end of his half-life. I think it's just the gene pool has been watered down so that everyone that's born is sick and cancerous. He's got his like tumors and stuff.
So I'm like, I'm not really sure what's going on here. But when the other guy tries to steal his steering wheel and he's like, I'm doing this, you're wasted. I'm like, okay, obviously I'm on your side because you're a little bit of an underdog right here.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I see what you're doing here and it's working.
Yep. I love it. But then they get in the car, which I love the visual of Max being strapped to the front of the car, which is super unrealistic, but is very fun because it's like the ships.
Mm-hmm. And it's like he's a counterweight. I mean, they say that at one point he's like, we need to move him to the back because we're front weighted right now. And so it's like it's in some ways extremely practical, right? And it shows how disposable he is to them.
Right. Also, who's taking the time to thread the tube through the chain? I'm just saying.
They are. Well, you don't want it flapping around everywhere.
I understand they don't want that to happen, but I'm just saying that took time. Did they?
They've got all those little kid war boys. That's one of their jobs, you know.
They're just little.
He spends
war
8-hour
boy
shifts threading. Yeah, he pre-threads.
Okay.
I think something that I realized near the end that should have been a note earlier was the scale in terms of population here. Right. At some points, you're like, wow, there's just thousands of war boys. And it's like this huge caravan. And by the end, you're like, there's actually a very finite number of cars that are chasing this war rig. And we're led to believe that's like they sent out their entire cavalry. Yeah. Right. And which is probably 50 vehicles less, maybe 35 or something. And which I think is very interesting. You know, so this movie in other hands might have been you cut to a shot and it's like 300, right? You just see infinite people like as far as the eye can see, and that shows how powerful the warlord is. But here it's like there's a lot of people depending on this water. There's a lot of war boys, probably like I don't know, 500 less, 300. Like it's actually you can wrap your hands around it kind of. So yeah, I mean, who's threading the IV line through the chains? But also you only need like 100 of them? I mean, that's not that big of a production.
I don't
If that's
know
how much
where
your
they
society
came from.
exists. You don't know where what came from?
The War Boys.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were offspring of Immortan Joe, like indirectly, or if it's just kind of like all those people down there, depending on the water, like they're just the population. I mean, I assume farmers or whatever, and they all had deformities of some kind. And so maybe like if they have someone that looks pretty normal, they just get snatched and become a war boy.
Yeah,
Something
I don't
like that.
That was something I was like, I don't understand this. You didn't give me anything to hold on to. Nothing.
Yeah, you didn't need anything. It's not about the war boys.
No.
How do you feel about Guitarman?
I think it is the most ridiculous thing ever. However, I did say maybe he's supposed to be like the little drummer boy, you know?
Yeah.
That's the concept. But also, like, it's definitely this is such a horrible thing to say, but it's definitely, this is a man's world kind of thing.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Like, let's do this really cool, completely ridiculous, impractical thing and hook a guitar guy up to the front of our convoy or whatever.
Worship thing.
Yeah.
I saw it as a nod to like religion, like the whole deal. These guys the war boys aren't getting paid. They know they're only going to live to like 30 or whatever. They keep talking about half-lives. You have to keep them. If you want them like out on a run, you have to keep them lathered up, like in an absolute frenzy all the time.
Yes.
So it's essentially like their whole lives, they're trained to look at this dude shredding on the guitar and be like, yeah. Like it's hard to keep someone in that extreme state of being pumped up. And so if you make it like
the tool that helps keep them.
Yeah. It's just part of the dance of, I mean, I keep saying religion, like it's essentially like their whole thing. And like, if you make it seem like a holy / whatever, just like thing that's pumping you up, that's going along with everything else, that's just keeping them in that mindset.
Yeah.
It's like put your money where your mouth is kind of thing.
That could be. It just is super horribly ridiculous. But I understand that. That's why, I mean, I said the drummer boy concept, you know?
Yes. Yeah. It's like Miller took that and was like, okay, what if we made that into guitar guy? Okay. Why would that be realistic? Yeah. I mean, realistic, obviously. There was flames coming out of it. Like it's not going for realistic.
No.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fire, and I don't know how
much fire.
And I don't know how more people didn't have like crazy sunburns and just literally any kind of burn on their skin all the time. They seemed very unmarred. They had scars that had healed over.
Yeah.
Or smooth skin.
My guess would be that if something really bad happens, you probably just die. Right? If there's something that's bad enough, it's probably just like, we don't waste the resources on even trying to save this person because the resources are that limited or precious.
That's interesting. I didn't.
So it's a survivorship bias, right? Well, why is no one here seem to be like on their last legs? Like, because everyone on their last legs is already dead.
I mean, even some of the scars that had healed over, you don't see any of them fresh.
Yeah. Maybe they were in an era of relative peace. There hadn't been a lot of full-on war battles here lately. Who are they battling? There was I like that we have Bullet Field and Gastown, but then if you take a left, you end up in Russia. There was the Russian spike porcupine cars,
which were kind of cool.
Yeah, it worked surprisingly well. Like they kept stabbing them and it didn't work with their like bomb sticks.
Yeah, I don't know why. That was weird. So that's when Max is still on the front of the car.
Yes. And then he doesn't get off the front of the car until they crash in the sandstorm.
Which would have killed them both, but okay.
The sandstorm was crazy because there's lightning coming down and like some cars were getting sucked up into like the actual cyclone part of it. And I guess we just don't have an equivalent of that on this still kind of successfully having an environment version of our world in real life.
Yeah.
Right. In a post-apocalyptic world, there's nothing to stop it. Why wouldn't that come up? We saw one tree.
And it was not dead, but not lusciously full of life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because the ground had turned sour.
Okay, so if we're going back, because I kind of jumped around a little bit, we're going back to the fight scene with Max and Furiosa and Nux. And that was amazing. I'm sure what really strikes me though is the choreography
of the like
fight.
battle.
Yeah. And Jeremy did bring up a good point, which I totally agree with. Sometimes that chain is like 2 foot long and sometimes it's like 8 foot long.
Yeah.
But I can kind of get away with that because if one person is pulling it,
yeah,
the
you never
other
know.
person's
Maybe they're moving together or they're not, where the slack's
Yeah.
going to be. I mean, I assume they had an actual length of chain.
like I think there's a little wiggle room there, but the choreography of understanding if I move this arm, that's going to cause this reaction to the person on the end of my chain. Like, that's something to wrap your head around and to do it right.
Yeah.
And they did a really good job of it.
Yeah, I wonder if this wasn't the first blood bag that Nux has had.
Interesting.
Could be. What about going totally back to the very beginning of the movie? They tattoo all of this stuff on his back, including his blood type. They put O negative universal donor and like that he was a fighter and all this stuff when they have him like pinned down in the very beginning. Do you remember?
Yes.
That was so much tattooing.
So much tattooing.
Precision
at one
tattooing.
time. And And then, I'm sorry, but broken wrists. He jumps out of the thing and hooks the chain over the hook that's hanging. He would have broken his wrist. There's no way.
Why?
Why? Rogge says, why? Not really. Okay, you tell me why.
If he's holding himself up by, like, if he's using his biceps at all, it's not like all the pressure's coming right on his wrists.
He said, run palms first into a brick wall and tell me if you don't break your wrists.
That's not the same as hooking your wrists over a hook.
If he was holding the chain is around his wrist and he's holding it and he hooks and does not straighten his arms, I'll give it to you. But I would have to rewatch it to see if his arms drop.
We've already seen this guy beat up a bunch of war dogs over and over again, you know, just in that first couple of scenes, like the amount that he's able to like escape. They're in the water and all that stuff. So at this point, I'm just like, I trust that this version of Tom Hardy is like Captain America, basically.
I mean, he's definitely good.
Yeah, but he's really good at fighting.
Threw me out of it too a little bit because I'm like, there's no way.
You think your favorite movie of all time involves freaking Hugh Jackman jumping like 40 feet down into like a water-filled building and holding his breath for 7 minutes while he's running a memory device. But as soon as someone jumps and hooks, I mean, we've seen versions of someone jumping and like grabbing a hook or like hooking those onto it. But as soon as it happens, you're like, well, this is just unrealistic. Like, what are we doing?
First of all, not my favorite movie of all time, but I did like it.
Yeah.
But I think it's because you expect the scenery and everything that I'm seeing expects me to recognize gritty, rough, unfinessed everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's no gentleness in any of this.
No.
Even the camera shots are very jerky and almost like strobe lighty effect, like where it's like a half a frame or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Sometimes.
So
it didn't stick out to me, but I could see it sometimes.
It is definitely making my brain think that all of this is like there's no finesse. If I'm watching a Mission Impossible movie and Tom Cruise does the same thing, I believe he did it because of the finesse piece of it. But for this movie, everything is so rough. I don't know a better way to say this, but everything is so rough that I expect the worst impacts.
Yeah, I just immediately believe that Tom Hardy knows what he's doing and is going to do it in a way that isn't going to break his wrists because he's like considering that. If he survived by himself in that one car for, you know, long enough to grow that beard and grow his hair to that length in the beginning, like he knows what he's doing.
And I'm also like, he's just desperate. Like I have to get out of that situation. I'm not necessarily thinking about surviving either. I'm thinking about surviving long enough to get out of the situation I was just in, but I'm not thinking about long term because the immediate need is for me to not be surrounded by all these guys tattooing me.
I mean, what's the real end game of jumping onto the hook? Like he just didn't have any other options. Like that's not realistic. He's not going to climb the rest of the chain and then shimmy down somehow.
So
he's just
for him
like
to process all of that, I don't think there's a lot of processing time. I think he's just doing it, which makes me think, again, it's just the harsh impact.
Sure. Maybe he should have broken his wrist there.
He would definitely have some kind of pain. Okay. And the other thing is when we stop and get to that fight scene, he's just full out letting Furiosa have it. And I'm sorry, but has your blood not been draining from your body for at least 2 hours?
Yeah,
and when
true.
you go and donate blood, they're like, just sit down. We want to make sure you don't pass out. Have a cookie. And he's like pummeling people. I don't know about the effects of adrenaline, so I can't tell you if adrenaline would override that. But that was crazy too.
Yeah.
You don't see him having any negative effects of his blood being withdrawn and the torture that he was put through at the first part of the movie at all. By the middle of the movie. Or even just with that fight.
Yeah, he's like Superman.
Except he's Bane, so
he's the best of them. He's the best dude that's left. And that's why he's able to kill all of the Rictus type guys, all the guys that Immortan Joe still runs. I really enjoyed the sniper grandmas.
Yes, I like them.
I loved that it was Furiosa had been the whole plan was let's make it to my people, the sniper grandmas. And she really breaks down when she's like, they tell her there's no more green place. Like it's gone bad and we ran out of water and stuff.
You went through it already.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, it's one of those things where you have that childhood memory that's so strong about this place that like, I still have hope for. I mean, there's hope again. And when she realized she was sincere, she wasn't leading these wives on in any way. It's like, she really was trying to take them to this place. And when she realizes it's not there, she's just like, what's the point of anything now?
Yeah. You skipped over the part where they throw Nux off the truck.
Yeah, he gets thrown on and off a couple of times.
I meant the girls sort of just drop him. Furiosa's going to kill him, and the girls are like, no, we're not killing anybody. And they're like,
you promise no unnecessary bloodshed. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm like, that's crazy. Which one said that, by the way?
I couldn't tell you which girl. There's Angharad and Toast and another one. I don't remember all their names. Cheeto with a D.
I think she was the blonde one. She might have been the one. The red-haired one. Anyways,
the red-haired one, I think, was Cheeto.
That was funny, I thought.
Maybe.
They're like, no unnecessary killing, and then they sort of just drop him out of the truck. And then, like a freaking cockroach, he's back again.
Yeah.
Like so many times.
Yeah, he tells Joe, and then he makes a jump onto the truck, but misses it. And then Immortan Joe just goes, mediocre, and keeps driving. And because he had been like, I'm taking you to Valhalla. And then he immediately just like gives up on him.
Yeah. And then the part where the part where Mad Max is collecting all of the weapons.
Where he like walks into the mist and then comes back with a bunch of guns.
Oh, I loved that. I actually did really like that. But I meant right when they decide he's going with them and he's like collecting all the weapons. So
from inside the cab of the truck. Yeah.
Which I thought was funny. And then they get back and they're through the thing, and she's decided basically, you're in this now, you're helping us. We are going to have to trust you to drive this truck because it's your survival too, right? So they go through the little canyon or whatever, and then
the sand people.
They get stuck in the mud, and Mad Max goes and kills the one guy, which is great. I love it. He's like, hold up a flare, and the guy's
like, there is a flare in front of your face.
It's right in front of your face. So I'm glad he got what was coming to him.
That was the king of Bullet Farm, right?
One of them.
I think so. Yeah. So Nux has this realization where he sees Angharad fall under the wheels, and Joe just keeps driving, and he's like, oh, Immortan Joe is not a good dude. He's not going to take me to Valhalla. Like, he kind of has realization that he's sort of been lied to. Especially when the wives are actually kind to him, especially the one that finds him farther back in the rigging or whatever of the truck. And so from then on, he's just like, oh, you guys need a war boy? Like, I'm your war boy now. Like, he's just ride or die for the good guys.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. I felt like he had a legitimate redemption arc where from the beginning, you were drawn to him because he's the underdog and he sincerely believes just what he's being told. It's not his fault. He's not like inherently evil. And then he falls a couple of times when trying to pursue that. And so by the time it wasn't cheap. I think it was earned when he came around to their side.
Yeah, because honestly, in the beginning, I'm like, dude, you need to just kill him. He's literally making your life harder.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah. You're talking about Max should have just killed Nux.
Yes. Right after the crash, should have just killed him.
But then he's valuable so many times, right? He fixes the engine.
He is.
The gas spitting into the exhaust that like juices the engine a little bit.
Which was crazy.
Just no regard for your own safety or comfort.
Which is how he was trained to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mad Max goes, "Are you a black thumb?" He's like, "Yeah, okay." And then he crawls underneath. He's like in the belly of the big rig, like reattaching stuff. And I love that black thumb, right? Instead of green thumb. Thumb that can fix engines.
I get caught in the whole, like, how big was this rig to be crawling in and out of it it's way big. That they were?
It's real big.
Like, and then if you step out of it for a second, you're like, they had to design this so that a camera could accurately take these shots. You're like, how big was this set? How big was the extended pieces to get the shot?
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's their whole, like, again, it's kind of like a religious artifact. Like, it's like their whole culture. Like, it's the most important thing is these vehicles, right? Everyone has to know how to drive them. Everyone has to know how to repair them. Did you like that they were all old school? Which has to be hearkening back to, like, all the vehicles were like old time Volkswagens and Trans Ams and stuff that they turned into. It wasn't like modern day vehicles.
I didn't care about it at all.
No?
No. The thing that I noted was when Immortan Joe tries to go up over the rocks. I remember that little like RC car commercial where you could drive up the things and you could flip it and it would keep driving because the wheels were big enough to catch on both sides.
On both sides. Yeah. 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 I mean, those tires were like 10 feet tall. Those were huge. One of my favorite things is when Max gets knocked off the truck. He's in one of the battles at the end. So he eventually convinces Furiosa. The move isn't to just go across the salt flats and hope we find something. The move is go back to where we know there's water in the Citadel. And they, of course, have to fight through all the war boys on their way back. And he gets knocked off the top of the truck. Furiosa reaches out, catches him with her metal arm, and holds him there for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he's trying to support himself a little bit to take some of the weight off, like put his foot on, the step up or whatever. But she doesn't get shot. She gets stabbed
with her gear shift. Oh, I thought it was in her side.
Yeah, in the side thigh, like from the waist kind of region. She continues to drive, continues to hold him, continues to work the pedals after being stabbed.
Yeah. That was BA.
She's a boss.
And then
he is too,
Nux comes under the bottom and he's like, I'm just going to kick you onto the other car.
Yeah, for sure. Because they all end up transferring to the other car later on too.
And I think it's during this fight scene where I'm like, what the heck does he still have his tube for? So I'm supposed to believe he literally has a needle stuck in his body and a tube that's conveniently tied together with like a leather strap on his shoulder, just in case he needs it later on.
Well, I think later on he has to put one back in.
He does.
I don't think it's on there the whole time. Because he says, like, okay, that's not retracting. You see him put it in when he gives the blood to Furiosa. Okay. You see them put it in him, and then because he's having one of the girls like attach the needle to the other end, and they're like all doing it as fast as they can. Okay. So I think he totally redoes it.
But he kept the tube.
Oh, like the port? Is that what they call it?
No, he literally has the tubing.
Oh, right. That could have been just extra that they had in the truck too, or something. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I think it's fair that they'd established that this is a way that we heal people in this world is by
blood
transfusion. And then they do it again later.
I'm just like, why didn't he just like rip that thing out after he was done being Nux's body bag, right?
Yeah.
But instead of doing that, they conveniently tied it, and you see it, and Jeremy and I noticed it at about the same time, and you're like, what the heck? And then he uses it again at the end. So you're like, okay, it was there for a reason, but would you have done that? Or did they just do it because he needed it at the end?
I think it could be a thing too where in this world, you don't waste anything. You don't throw away a resource.
Okay, I'll take that one. That sounds
this
logical.
guy has probably been drinking his own pee living out in that truck. So like, or living out in that car for years. Like he does, you don't throw away a scrap of anything in case you can use it.
In case you could use it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing he throws away that I can remember is his mask. After he files it off, he tosses it just in disgust, which I get. I mean, that's symbolic more. And it has to be so annoying.
Oh yeah.
To have that whole thing on his face.
And confining and.
I couldn't believe that she handed him a file to saw it off. They don't bolt clip it. Why didn't they just? They had the bolt clip cutters. Yeah. I didn't get that.
Yeah.
The sniper grandmas are cool because they are like the seed ladies and they're the keepers of like the lore from before. They had lived in the green place. You get that like old sage, like wise woman thing from them. And then they are very legitimately like boots on the ground, like shooting people during the next battles. And I appreciated that. They're like, they had to survive out there. I
really liked how they rolled up to the power thing and Max is like, that's a trap. Like, what are you doing?
Which you knew too. I mean, you've seen enough horror movies.
Oh yeah.
Or whatever. That you're like, that's clearly bait. He goes, uh-oh.
Yeah.
That's bait. And she knew too.
She knew.
Furiosa knew. Yeah.
He didn't know she knew.
Right.
I feel like they had their counterparts in the young brides.
Right. Each one hooked onto a different sniper grandma. Yeah.
So obviously Zoe Kravitz loved her character because she was all about the weaponry, which was kind of fun. And she's, like, you kill people with that? Like, that's her thing. Fun.
Did not clock that was Zoe Kravitz until you just said that.
Oh, well, see, I do bring something to this podcast.
What else is she in?
She was Catwoman in
haven't seen it.
One of the movies.
Doesn't matter. Didn't see it.
What else is she's
Divergent, didn't see it. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. She voices MJ.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's in Fantastic Beasts. That's how I know who she is. She's Lila Strange. That makes sense. And she's Lenny Kravitz's daughter, I assume?
Yes. And Lisa Bonet.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, well, never mind.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it made sense that they would each like kind of have their counterparts and stuff.
The one thing that was really irritating me about that whole scene anytime the grandmas were there was she has this bag of seeds, which is great, but it doesn't zip or close. You're in a moving vehicle trying to jump into another vehicle. Close the bag. It
doesn't have like one of those like metal like clasp things like on a little clutch or something. They don't ever
show it closed. Nobody
they don't ever really show it. They want you to see that there's seeds in it. You got to remember that's the seed bag. I appreciate
that, but also if this is as precious of a resource as you want me to believe it is, then you should freaking protect it.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so. I mean, it's closed. It's closed in the very beginning, right? She opens it to show her what's in it.
Yes.
So she keeps it closed on her motorcycle and
stuff.
But
then what's-her-face little bride girl just opens it and you see her hanging off the front of the car with the bag open.
Yeah.
Nobody on that set was like, we should, have it open, but you've got to close it.
Maybe they talked about it and they decided that in the moment, the bride who's so young and just frazzled doesn't think to do it.
Well, then they shouldn't have taken the time to make them tough because they make them fight and everything.
Kind of. Not that they
don't do a good job of it, but they're trying.
Yeah, so they're going to forget to do things. That's okay.
That's too much grace.
I love him pumping his own blood into Furiosa, right? This guy went from I'm only about saving myself, I'm going to hold these brides at gunpoint just so I can get a drink of water, to I'm literally going to give you my blood to keep you alive because I care about Furiosa that much. And I was like, wow, they're just making him the embodiment of like, yeah, this is the savior of humanity. Like this is the guy, he's like the hero they need. He was like Batman at that point, ironically.
I think that I don't think he was saving her because, okay, maybe he was saving her because he liked her so much. I think he was also saving her because he liked what she meant to everybody else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think it's necessarily a romantic attraction. He's just like, you're a good person and it is important that you stay alive.
Yeah.
But it takes that's still a big choice to make, to hook your own blood into that person to keep them alive.
Well, I mean, he has very little regard for keeping himself alive.
I don't know if I agree with that. That's kind of his whole deal. He does whatever he can, whatever it takes to escape. He almost just left and like took the war rig and himself. And I was like, no, I'll like my own way. Like from the very beginning, it's one of the quotes in the beginning is like, you only have one thought left in your brain, and that's just survival. Like it's just all about survival.
Okay, maybe that's the wrong way to say it.
They said enough in the beginning like that's kind of his whole deal, is just caring about like one moment to the next, how do I survive? So then to purposely, right, he was so offended by having to give his blood to Nux, and to purposely give it to her, I thought was a big step for him.
I mean, it probably is a big step for him. I just guess, how do I want to say it? I think that he's all in either way.
Yeah.
He either cares about you or he doesn't care about you.
Right. Once the switch flipped where he was like on their side, then yeah.
Then he was going to do the best that he could to make sure everybody came out alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, what did I write here? When Nux dies, when he spins, he flips the big rig, blows it up so that way no one can get through there from the pass, right? That they were going through, and you can see in his eyes, he knows it's about to happen, and he gives them the like, witness me.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, that it was affecting. Like that was one of the more emotional deaths scenes that I've seen in a movie in a long time, because he, like you said, ride or die. Like he was so fully on the good guy's side. It was like, this is my whole life. And he was someone that knows that he was born to die.
Yeah.
He was born to be disposable, essentially. But he had enough humanity come through before that I was like, my boy Nux. Because they had planned on taking him back and like arriving triumphant with Nux at the lead to be like, look, I captured them. And that's how they were going to retake it. And they ended up doing it peacefully instead. But yeah, it was a bummer that Nux didn't get to make it through.
I think that was kind of a bummer, but
it's realistic. Yeah. Not everyone's going to make it.
Not everyone's going to make it.
Several sniper grandmas died.
Which was kind of annoying too. I'm like, they met all of these ladies who have this history and can teach them. And then, I don't know, were there like 5 of them or 8 of them? And like,
there's a chunk.
Half
Yeah,
of them
8 or 10
died.
probably.
They only ended up with like 2 at the end or something.
Yeah. And I think that's really good, because I agree it's annoying, right? It's sad. I wish they hadn't died. But that's the sadness, that's the horror about what is going on right now, is that the good things that existed, in order for us to move forward, you're just going to lose some of that. Yeah. And they, it's sad, but they knew what they were getting into, right? If you had asked them beforehand, hey, some of you are going to die, they would have been like, we're signing up for it. Like that's what it's going to take for humanity to move forward. They knew
that they might have to sacrifice for the younger generation to move forward.
Yeah. They did it in full. They did what they did in full knowledge of what could happen, and they would have welcomed it. Knowing if you told them, hey, we were going to succeed, but so it was honorable deaths for sniper grandmas.
Yeah.
I liked, so at the end they get back to the Citadel and they let them up because I don't know. I lost a little bit of what was going on there. Like they saw Immortan Joe's dead body and everyone's like, oh, and they start chanting, let them up. And there's got to still be a few able-bodied war boys up there, right? And they're just looking around like, what do we do? What do we do? And some kids go, well, we'll just do it. And they just pulled it.
Yeah.
Like, why were they not mad that Immortan Joe was dead? Does that just speak to
the shock,
how
because they
cruel
didn't
he was when he was their leader? That they all were devoted to him, but once they see him dead, they're like, all right, that's actually probably a good thing.
I think they were just so like surprised that he was dead that they didn't know, like they were trying to process, what do we do now? Yeah. And the little kids were like, oh, that's Furiosa. We know her and we love her.
And if she killed Immortan Joe, that must have been for a good reason. I thought there would have been more loyalty to him.
Or she's here and she can be our leader now because we don't have anybody. She's filling the vacuum. I don't even know if they drew the connection that she killed him. For all we know, they were just bringing
someone
his
else
body
killed
back.
him. We brought back his body. Yeah, that's true. That could be true. But then the milk mamas get their moment, and they're the ones that release the water. Yeah. And I was like, yes, they're still here. They're still doing cool stuff. I'm
sure they knew that he was a horrible person. Like, they
Yeah.
weren't able to escape, but they weren't going to let the absence of him continue to. They weren't going to let him in death also
Right.
oppress them.
Right. Everyone except for, Rictus and Fetus Rictus, pretty much, who are like his direct descendants.
Yeah.
We're all pretty willing to be like, okay, there's a better world that's possible here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really taken by the humanity. I had a note that was like, even to call this movie allegory, I don't think is fair. It's more just like, what if we strip everything away and this is just a movie about what humanity would do in the most extreme of circumstances, right? Like there's no one ever second guesses. There's no like blame. There's no bickering. There's no interpersonal anything, because that's not what it's about. It's just like, we're gonna make this decision. If it works, we survive. If it doesn't, we don't. And we just have to, as soon as we make the decision, we have to go all in for it. And I thought that it was a good, I liked the Tom Hardy, Charlize Theron of it with that. I thought that they were just very in the present doing all of that. And then also I love a good, hey, we should take care of the environment a little bit and not just let the world go completely to crap. So I like both of those aspects. And it was just too unrealistic for you to latch on to those themes.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really explain it. Didn't love it. Won't watch it again for sure. But I like Tom Hardy and I like Charlize Theron. Like I like their movies. I just didn't love that in this. I just needed something else.
I will watch it again. Probably it's not an every year thing for me. I would like to maybe see some of the old ones and see if how much the themes carry over, because it's the same director. George Miller doesn't do a lot of movies.
I feel like that scene where Immortan Joe is driving and something happens and then we like zoom in on his face really hard is something that was very like classic to the older movies. That was like a very typical style of the 70s and 80s, a shot.
Could
and
be.
Maybe it is, but it did feel very throwbacky, reminiscent, whatever you want to call it.
Fun fact, George Miller also directed 3,000 Years of Longing, the Tilda Swinton Idris Elba film that was the flabbergasted episode that never was.
That's crazy.
So this guy does not direct just movies. His movies are about really big themes and it's not about the plot at all or any interpersonal relationships. It's about being weird.
I feel like the connections between those movies are the environment.
The environment?
Yeah, because the technology and electricity is what keeps the genie from, like, the electromagnetic pulses in the air or whatever turn him to dust. Remember when she finds him in the basement?
I think it was just magic.
No, he's like, he says something like he can't survive in this world because of the technology.
I don't remember any of that.
Oh my goodness.
And Babe Pig in the City.
That one really veered off.
Yeah. Happy Feet. He's the guy that does Happy Feet.
Okay, environment again, Happy Feet.
Yeah, true. Hey, it matters.
It does
Way to center
matter.
that in your filmography. So if you guys have thoughts about George Miller's filmography, if you have strong feelings about the amount of pressure it takes to break a grown man's wrists, if you think of yourself as a war boy, we would love to hear from you. You can contact us on various social media platforms at FlabberPod, or you can call or text us at the FlabberPod, the Flabber line. What do we call it? Flapback?
240-MOVIE76. 240-668-4376.
Thanks for listening. We'll hear from you guys next time.
Bye.